Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Clayton and James Show. And just before we started, Clayton said to me, "Was that Pedro Neto's first goal for Chelsea on Monday night?" I said, "No, mate. He scored against you." My name is James. How are you, Clayton?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. Great start to the day.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be talking to Monday Night Football in a moment. We're going to have a little chat about footballers and mental health on this podcast. I've got an interesting story on a 12th man. When a 12th man helps you score a goal, which Clayton doesn't know what that's going to be about. Euro Focus this week is about arguably the biggest club in the world. And on this day, is from 2011. But we will start with the Monday Night Football, which Clayton has already informed me he didn't watch, and you pretty much had an escape, mate. It wasn't a thriller.
Yeah, I I was working and I checked Slack at one point during the game and I saw some of the patrons. I basically got the vibe that it was one of the dullest games that people were watching for a while. So yeah, what were the takeaways? I guess Chelsea back up to fourth. So good result, but it didn't sound like it was convincing.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it kind of dominated the end passages of the game where they were chasing the game. But I think probably the biggest takeaway on this would be West Ham's performance and how much stronger they look in terms of their structure and defensively. I think
Okay.
they've been wildly open for a long time. This even predates Lopetegui. Like if you got in front even against David Moyes' West Ham, they took some absolute batterings on a few occasions last year. Now, of course, they're winning 1-0. You expect them to go lower and deeper and stuff. But yeah, Chelsea were struggling to create big moments and big chances and really hurt West Ham. So I think Potter's gone in there and really helped with the structure. They're not going to be a team anymore that I think, oh, Palmer's playing West Ham at home. I want to captain him. Like that fixture just feels completely different now to what it felt like 2 months ago. We'd gone, oh yeah, if it was a single game week. Say if Salah had a single game week, I think a lot of us would have been captaining Palmer this week at home to West Ham. And probably the message on that would be, yeah, West Ham's maybe not the sort of game to target that so much now. And they are obviously working with a number of injury issues at the moment. I mean, Jared Bowen returned and his goal is absolutely terrific. Such a
Why don't
beautiful
I have a
strike.
Colwill assist for that goal?
It's a good question. I don't have it either because you're sitting on my bench, Clates. Did you actually play Goal over
I did,
Gabriel this
yeah,
week?
I did. Mate, up the bookies odds.
Actually, do you know what? Sod it. Beto, do you just want to have a moment?
Big bad birthday Beto. What a man. Unbelievable. I didn't hear you gave me shit for that, apparently. Sujin for me.
Yeah, yeah, we ripped you a bit, but credit to you,
I
mate.
hadn't
That's one
heard
hell
it.
of a punt. The reason I hated it so much was it was so obvious that Everton were going to buy a forward, which
Oh,
they
so
didn't.
I didn't know it was that obvious that they were going to buy a forward. So my logic on it was genuinely like I prefer a striker to a left forward, left attacking mid. It was genuinely as simple as that. And if I could, I remember I was speaking to John Jacobson, one of our patrons, about it, and I was like, if you can promise me 180 minutes of both, I want Beto. And then my logic was if he does, even if Everton get a forward in, if he did well in the first game week, he'll probably get the second. So
I wasn't having it, but well done, mate. Congratulations. Um, Jared Bowen's going to be interesting in the next few weeks. We've got a couple of games coming up where you could see him being a nice little differential. You know, Newcastle coming into difficult fixtures. I know people looking at Gordon to sort of like Boomo or maybe even the cheaper Bournemouth assets. Bowen will be one that will be largely overlooked. And I thought, considering he'd been out for a month,
did he
he
look
looked
good?
absolutely fine, right? He got through the whole game. His strike for the goal is just so pure and
Great finish.
beautiful. You're right, it is a great pass from Levi Colwell as well. It was interesting they didn't bring Mavropana straight back in the team. So they still left it with Soufal as the right-sided centre back. That's a little bit of a botch job at the moment with Cresswell, Kilman, and Soufal. I think it's about in terms of the balance and how they're playing out. But obviously, what they cannot do with that back three is go and play on the halfway line.
Sure.
Get absolutely destroyed over the top.
Yeah,
So it
there's
also
no pace
suits
at all.
them at the moment to be deeper. The two fullbacks, I think, are kind of defensive first in terms of Emerson and Wan-Bissaka, but they do have the energy to play the wing back roles and get up and down, so that works for them.
There's a guy in their team I don't recognize. Irving? Who's that?
Andy Irvin, yeah, he played all right. It's a big lad. He can
Right.
he can look after himself. He might have picked up a knock during the game actually. But yeah, he did pretty well in midfield with Suchek, so he'd got the nod over Rodriguez. Alvarez wasn't in the squad, and we'd already got obviously Bowen back. Paquetá missed out. Bowen played as kind of the nine, Kudos just behind it to the right, and Carlos Soler to the left, which included this really one moment that was quite striking in the game. I don't want to say alarming because it's not nice, but Soler had the ball and it was coming to him, and he saw Reece James coming, and that's one of them. I think you control it into your body and you think of going backwards. He pushed it past him and he outstripped
Ah,
Reece
okay.
James.
Yeah, they're all aware of the hamstrings, right? Probably know they can do them in a race.
Maybe. It looked like it was a difficult moment for James on the chat. It's nice to see him back playing. He also Reece James had a really awkward landing in the first half. Where he come down kind of jumps up for a header and he come down straight leg and his knee looked like it went. You're like, oh my God. And there's been so many ACL injuries
Yeah.
lately. This was a real headline we had in women's football last year about the amount of women's players getting ACL injuries. I can't remember a season in the Premier League where there'd been so many men's players getting ACL injuries.
Yeah.
Feels like half the teams have had a player have an ACL injury. That's
I
how it
think
feels. I'd have to
seen
look at the data, but
yeah, Dragasins was confirmed as an ACL as well, right? Recently.
Dragic ACL, we think
Yeah.
Lissandro Martinez is going to be as well.
Yep. Yeah, it's concerning.
There's
Do you
another
think
two at the weekend.
James going off 61 minutes, is that just load management, do you think?
Yeah, I
Yep.
think so. They can't overload him at the moment. Tosin Adarabioyo played at right-sided centre back. Obviously, Chalobah had come back into the team recently. He came on as a very, very late substitute for Cole Palmer. I'm not quite sure on the reason of that. I think Chalobah would be more suitable. Strategically, they set up kind of similar to how they did. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, how they did with Wolves. With
So they
they
did
had
it again.
Dewsbury Hall going to the right of Palmer. This time it was Enzo Fernandez. It felt a bit more natural in build up. Cucurella again from left back, pushing him to them really high positions. It wasn't as pronounced as it was in that Wolves game, I didn't think, but that's what they were going for. Jorgensen played in goal
Mm.
instead of Sanchez, which a lot of us were predicting. A lot of the Chelsea guys were predicting, say, yeah, he's going to change it now. If you're a Sanchez and Fabianski owner, that's kind of turned really badly for you over the last couple of weeks, and you probably need to deal with that. And I guess ultimately, going into the next game, you're probably going to want to look at something that might double, subject to obviously what happens in the Carabao semi-finals. There was a lot of concern about Cole Palmer during the game from fantasy managers because most fantasy managers don't realise that a game of football lasts for 90 minutes.
Why? What was the verdict and the narratives doing the
He's
rounds?
too deep. He's not having
Right.
efforts on goal. Rah, rah, rah. I felt honestly that from the point that Chelsea equalised, he grabbed the game,
Okay.
and that's what top players do.
Yep.
If you're a player of Palmer's quality, I think yes, he looked deep quite a lot. He hadn't looked like he was at the top end. I think once they equalised, and the goal was a little bit controversial because it really did look at it for there was arguably a foul on the halfway line on Bowen, which I think was too far back that they kind of overlooked that. But Mark Gu had come on for Nicholas Jackson. Yeah, that prick with another 1 pointer. It's going well, my ownership of him. He looks like it comes to Cucurella on the back post and then shots blocked and then Neto obviously scores on the rebound. But I think it come back to Fernandez. His shot was blocked and then Neto scores. It was Fernandez got the assist. But it was difficult to tell if Gu touched it or not before it went to Cucurella. If he didn't, Cucurella was onside. If he did touch it, and obviously was offside because it was an additional touch, I thought he probably just about flicked it, but they couldn't
Okay.
like
They
prove
couldn't
it
prove it. Yep.
100%. I get it. That's fine. But I felt from that point of the game that Palmer was like, yeah, I'm having this now. I'm going to win this football match. And he started just wandering into different areas, end up wide on the left, wide on the right. And yeah, really stepped up at a moment of need for Chelsea because it looked a bit flat. And one interesting aspect of them, I think, at the moment is when you look at the bench from the weekend, and they're not missing too many at the moment. So there's obviously issues at centre back with Fafana, obviously is a longer term one. Badia Shill's also injured, but they've replaced the two there with the one of Chalobah. So you only kind of one down.
Yep.
Lavia is a huge miss. And obviously Mikhailo Mudryk, we know about the suspension. That's kind of all that they're really missing. And suddenly that bench looks quite weak, which is interesting when obviously in the first half of the season, they very much ran with a second team in the Conference League.
Yeah.
Suddenly it looks a bit thinner. People like Disasai has gone out on loan, just a bit shorter of numbers. I wonder if they've left themselves a little bit light. And it's possibly worth noting that some of these first team players, and I guess was always likely to be the case, will play in the Conference League the deeper it gets.
Yeah.
Big win for Chelsea in the context of obviously where they're at in the table. So now up to fourth, 4 points behind Forest, two above City and Newcastle, three above Bournemouth. They obviously go to Aston Villa
Just one
next.
one question on. You said Nicholas Jackson's one pointer. Was that an injury?
Not sure. So in the first half, he went for a challenge. I think he'd come across quite fast, and as he stopped, he felt his hamstring afterwards. Then it was about a minute or two later, he sat down and he was sitting on the floor and he was feeling the back of his hamstring. This was in the first half, and he called for attention. He thought, someone's feeling their hamstring. It's game over, right? He came on. He continued. He didn't look quite right, but then in the first 10 minutes of the second half, I felt like his movement was okay. But then he got taken off on what roughly 55.
Yeah.
So that could have been a see how you feel for 10 minutes, and it might even be that the manager's made a decision himself, watching him closely and gone, nah, you're not 100%. I'm going to take you off. It was interesting also that Mark Gu was brought on before Christopher and Kunko.
Yeah. Yeah, that
When
is quite
previously at
telling, I think.
City, he'd taken Jackson off quite early at City. I think it was just after 60. And Jackson and Kunku went on there. And we said I wasn't sure about that move at the time, particularly in a game like that. Against a low block like West Ham, completely understand the variation way more. And Kunku did come on, but then played in a wider area later in the game. So yeah, for a Jackson owner like me, it's a bit of a concern now. I think if Tottenham did manage to hold on against Liverpool, I think I'd go to Jimenez.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I don't know what I want to do with it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because obviously I was saying I was looking at buying him, and I think I'm in that fortunate position where I can kind of assess the next two and see how they look ahead of 27, 28 because they're the only two fixtures I'd want him for. But I mean, yeah, for someone like yourself at the minute, it's a bit of a tricky one, isn't
People
it?
will be screaming Chris Wood at me.
I've not owned him once this season.
It's really dependent for me as well, quite a lot in terms of obviously who goes through for the semi-finals, and I need to think about 29 as well as 25, and there's every chance subject to how it lands. I mean, if it was like a Tottenham Arsenal, ironically, if it was a Tottenham Arsenal North London derby in the Carabao Cup final, I'd have 9 or 10 players
I've not
as it
actually
stands
worked
now
it.
for 29. So
I need
not
to
that I
work out
want that to
those.
be the final, by the way. Piss off tonight, mate. I'm sure neither of us are going to be there as it stands, most likely, mate. Whereas obviously, also if it's like an Arsenal Liverpool final, then I've got like 7, 8 doublers for 25. But then I've got no room for maneuver for 29. And of course, Jackson would be one of them having a double
Yeah,
under that circumstance. So then he's got to stay, isn't he? And then you look at it, he's got Leicester at home and Southampton at home, 27, 28. It's like he's going to end up staying there, isn't he? So it depends what happens in the semi finals for me. I probably wouldn't be chasing anything Chelsea though, under the circumstance that they do double. I wouldn't, go and buy a Chelsea defender because they've got an extra fixture away to Arsenal. Like.
nah.
I wouldn't be chasing Jackson either. I've seen a few suggest about in the event that say Tottenham made the final and Arsenal didn't, moving Palmer to Sun and that. And I don't need to add anything, do I?
Let me tell you something.
Let me tell you something. He's been priced up at 6 million as a midfielder,
Seen that.
and he does look like the one. We'll talk about him more tomorrow on the transfer window show. He does look like the one that's been priced up. You think I need to watch that. I'm not saying it's going to be anything, but I need to watch that. Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Before we move on, Clayton wants to do a piece on mental health for footballers. Just wanted to add a note on David Coote from last week. So we had a lot of feedback, which I think was correct and accurate. We spoke about our kind of unhappiness that Coote had chosen the Sun newspaper to run his interview with. And a lot of people, I think, correctly pointed out, and it hadn't occurred to me, that there was every chance that he might not have had a choice.
Yeah, I saw that as well. So yeah, really good
I.e.,
point.
could it have been they, because we'd said, right, they had the scoop on him in the first place. Why was he then doing the interview with them? Well, could it have been that they put some sort of pressure on him? I'm not saying this did happen, but it's a possibility. Put some pressure on him to say, right, we're going to run another story on you unless you want to give your version of events in an interview. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to acknowledge, because I felt in hindsight, I thought, yeah, that's probably not fair to have been saying why has he chosen them when he we don't know.
Yeah,
but
to
he
be honest,
might not have had a choice.
I was the same as you. When I saw someone, it was one of my mates that said that. I was like, damn, I genuinely didn't think
Yeah.
of that. Yeah, felt like a bit of a muppet after, to be honest. But
So
yeah,
no, I don't think so. It was just something we hadn't considered, but I did want to make a point of that and acknowledge that from the conversation last week. Go on, in, Clayton. You want to talk about mental health for footballers a little
yeah.
bit?
Just so when we're looking for topics for this, I basically spend every day on BBC Sport, and I saw a story come up this week, which I think has got lost in mainstream media, but I thought it was quite a nice one actually. Well, take nice in a
Pinch of salt.
nuanced perspective the way I talk through this, but I'll explain why I say that. So Simon Church, who was a former Reading striker, I think he made over 100 appearances for them, and he's come out and kind of shared his story on the kind of the title of the article is "The Dark Side of Being a Footballer," and he shared his story about kind of growing up, I think, in the Reading Academy and what football environments were like back then. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is like I think you are seeing a trend of people speaking up a bit more about their mental health in football. And I do think, and he acknowledged it. And this is when I said the nice perspective of it. Like he actually said nowadays, like you do feel like there's more support. You do feel like people are speaking up more. And I think it's one of them where like mental health is a conversation that well, you and Sudge have been having pretty much every year since you started Planet FPL, I think. And I think in that period, I do see a growing trend of it being more acceptable in football. And it's interesting, like in my degree at the minute, I'm actually, one of my modules is on mental health and counseling and stuff. And like, I'm doing case studies, learning about other sports. And there's a tennis player who classic, has escaped my mind, but she was struggling with mental health and came out in the press and she kind of got obliterated for not doing press conferences and stuff like that. Whereas I do feel like in football, it is becoming more acceptable. And we've seen famous players like Richarlison come out, high profile players. And again, this Simon Church article just made me empathize with him and what he had to go through, but it made me kind of happy with the way I see it trending in football. And I wanted to get your perspective on it, if you kind of share the same perspective on how you think mental health is being perceived in football at the minute.
I mean, it's almost an extension of the conversation about David Coote last week in the sense
Yeah,
he didn't
true.
feel like he could be himself in a macho male dominated world, basically, right? Um, I think, yeah, it's becoming much more widely accepted. If you look at the reaction to someone like Richarlison, and the interview he did, Richarlison's quite a divisive character in the sense I think like if he plays for your team and the way he gives it, you're like, yeah. If you're playing against him when he's on the pitch, you probably think he's a bit of a prick actually, and I
Yeah.
get that. But I think that that's the sort of one you afterwards think, yeah, that's unless you've really, really got a massive hate for him or rivalry with Tottenham. And I think even most people like yourself would go, I've got some, there's a rivalry. I've got real sympathy for what's
Yeah,
going
definitely.
on, dealing with the mental aspect behind the game. I saw an interview actually with Dimitar Berbatov and Stumpeg. She's a brilliant
She
influencer
is
on YouTube.
great.
She's great. Yeah, she's doing a link up with our buddy James Alcott on his podcast. She's going to be a permanent guest for him. She's brilliant, and he was saying to her Berbatov. So when you think about, in fact, I won't even say what he's going to say, but I'll ask you, Dimitar Berbatov, what do you think?
Quite nonchalant, relaxed, casual, chill.
Yeah, like there's nothing that could bother him, right?
Yeah.
He played with this was a guy who guys he could take a first touch off a cloud like incredibly and stuff, but he did used to he's a bit lazy and stuff like that. And he said doesn't matter who you are, what standard of the game you're at. He said if someone says to you like you're not working hard, that's the worst. Like call me shit. Don't say I'm working hard because I am.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it in my way a little bit differently and stuff. He's saying that's the one that will always bother players the most. And I'm sure that's not the case for all players. I'm sure there's plenty of players who are very influenced when they got told their shit. I spoke about I've spoken about Brennan Johnson a few times this season, right? So
Yeah.
Brennan Johnson shut down his Instagram account and then went on this mad train of scoring like every week for about 3-4 weeks. And then I reopened his Instagram account. I think he scored like once or twice since. Now that could just be coincidental, but clearly, and I think Church was saying this, he's like, you can't help but look
Yeah, of course. You can't
like
avoid
the
it
stuff
sometimes.
on social media. I think you've just got to be so mad disciplined. There's some players who I listen to in interviews sometimes, and I think, yeah, you genuinely have never been on Twitter. I can
Yeah.
tell you've never been on there, and you're not bothered by it. The influence of social media is obviously it's people want to be dark. Berbatov also said that in an interview. He said like it's human nature for many people to attack on the negative.
Yeah,
You will have heard me speaking about Tottenham fans in the past and saying they always need a scapegoat. There's got to be someone in that team that they dislike. So a lot of us have criticised like Radu Dragic. Now you feel fucking terrible because he's done his ACL at the weekend, right? And you think he's not out there not trying. Like I'd never look at him and go, "You're not trying. You're not giving your best." Personally, don't think like it's good enough to play in our team, but I think he'd maybe be very good in another team. How's he dealing with that mental when he's like he's coming in for Romero and Van der Ven, who clearly it's a level up, and he's only out there giving his best. He can't be either of those guys. He can't
yeah.
sprint like Mickey Van der Ven, or he can't distribute like Christian Romero.
But this,
He can defend the penalty area very well, but he's a very different type of player.
yeah, but this is where I think in my brain there is a distinction between like critical analysis and abuse, and I think that's where I think with the tool of social media, I think far too often it falls on that side of abuse. And like you only have to look at the Havertz thing from a couple of weeks ago, and obviously what referees get and stuff. But yeah, it was a story that I think yeah, mental health in football has been a trending conversation for years, and like, I think there's still a long way to go. But I'm actually quite encouraged with the the trends that I'm seeing where like people are feeling comfortable to start speaking up. And I don't, when I see a story like this, I don't see backlash. When Richarlison came out with his story and his sharing his perspective on things, I was a bit concerned thinking, oh, when I go see the quote tweets, what am I going to see? And I was really encouraged, but like I didn't really see that much shit towards it and stuff. And I
Because
think
most people in the world are nice.
I think so, yeah. It's just football kind of brings out the worst in people most of the time. But yeah,
I
it's
think
something
so.
that I think it is gonna be one of these things that the more you get people coming out sharing their stories, it will make someone else feel more comfortable to do so. And even like I said, I'm especially because of my degree, the field I'm kind of going into, I'm being more exposed to it more. And like there's lots of teams that are kind of appoint player care professionals and stuff. And like it is something that I think is being invested in more and given more yeah, more of a spotlight compared to what it was like perhaps in the early 2000s and stuff. And even like, again, a different sport, but Andrew Flintoff doing a case study on him at uni at the minute. He's been quite open about suffering with bulimia, and eating disorder. And he said like in that kind of male egotistical world when he was kind of coming through and he was a young 20-year-old and he was being slammed for his weight and it was like Fat Flintoff and stuff and speaking about that from the perspective of like what it was like then compared to what it's like now. I do think society as a whole is becoming a bit more open-minded to these things. So yeah, although it was sad to hear about Simon Church's struggles, I looked at it from a really encouraging perspective, to be honest.
Yeah, look, the more people can speak about their issues, if you're helping someone, that's one thing we always say. I always say about my DMs, right? They're not open for people to send me screenshots of their FPL team. It's genuinely if people having a dark moment and just want to reach out to them. People say, I don't know you, James, but I feel like I do. Then fine, that's what my DMs are open for. Come and talk to me. I'll always be open and help in any way I can. Unfortunately, I don't think you'll ever eradicate evil. So, give an
No.
example. How many times this year have we spoken about Lisandro Martinez and going in for two-footed tackles and being like, you're going to hurt someone eventually soon. Now, he's obviously suffered a really bad injury, which is just completely unlucky at the weekend. I see people on Sunday night going, he deserved it. And
Mhm.
I think, bloody hell, man. Like, what makes you do that?
Yeah, like you said earlier, that there's something in the human nature where you do just kind of double down on the negatives and stuff. And yeah,
I don't think you'll ever eradicate the negativity from people on social from that. And I mean, so take that as an example. The messages I saw from tweeters weren't necessarily like they're obviously not directed directly at Martinez. They're not slid, but they're public and open for everyone. You're still going to see it. You mentioned the Kai Havertz example. I mean, people will DM in his wife,
his
right?
wife, like, it's
And
crazy.
wishing the sort of things I wouldn't even want to say on this podcast.
Yeah, mate. And the social media thing for me, like, this is a whole different conversation, but like how people are allowed to create a social media account without any form of verification of identity, it blows my mind because I think with that you eradicate half of it, to be honest. If you have to put a face to an account or a name and identification.
I've said this in the past. Like, I'd be very happy to put whatever is needed up there to verify my identity.
Yeah,
No
same.
problem at all. oh yeah, but personal information. Yeah, but I ain't got nothing to hide here personally. So come knock on my door for my fire stick that I don't have, etc., etc. Um, I don't think we'll ever eradicate evil, unfortunately, but we definitely can work on speaking out more.
Yeah. And
Very much so.
yeah, and the thing that actually instigated that conversation, actually, to be fair, was Reading's game on Saturday. It was actually with a mental health charity as the main shirt sponsor called Bed Air, and it was a one-off initiative to designed to get people in sport to talk about mental health. So I think the more we see stuff like that, the more it will kind of have that snowball effect, hopefully. So yeah, good on Simon Church.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, he's not a high profile player. So that's why you found the article, which is very nicely done on the BBC's website, quite hidden. Whereas obviously the Richarlison one has made very, very big headlines. Arteta spoke out very well for Havertz after that incident and stuff. So yeah, we should absolutely encourage people to come out with whatever their demons are and be able to speak openly about it. Footballers have a position of power, and we kind of assume that they're these perfect role models. Not robots, man.
Nah,
Yeah, all human. And we said that even about like referees last week. They're human. Make mistakes. I can tell you about a big referee mistake very recently, Clates. You
is
don't know
this
what this 12 man stuff is, do you?
nah?
What do
Because
you
when
think it is? Clates thinks I'm about to give him a tactical masterclass. I'm not.
no, I just thought it was. I thought it was going to be an emotional subject where we talk about, oh, have you been in a game where you felt like as a 12th man you've influenced the team, like as the fans and this and that. But as you've said there, I'm probably thinking it's something to do with a refereeing disaster class and bribery or some shit.
Now you think Arsenal have had some bad decisions lately, yeah?
Go on, what's happened?
You never had to play against 12 men, did you?
No, go on. Where am I looking for this?
So there was an incident in Holland, or sorry, the Netherlands at the weekend in
In
a
their top
game
tier.
in their top tier involving Heerenveen and Fortuna Sittard. Heerenveen are managed currently by Manchester United legend Robin van Persie, who I promise will not get another mention on this podcast. Lies. He's manager of Heerenveen. They're in the Eredivisie playing a game against Sittard at the weekend. They're both kind of mid table, lower end of the top half. Both kind of neck and neck where they are positioning. Anyway, going into the final minutes of the game, Heerenveen are winning 2-1. And Sittard decide to make a double substitution. Okay, so it's usual one board goes up, another one goes up. So one player comes off and he ends up speaking to the coach, and another player comes off. So walk past the fourth official who's doing his stuff. Presumably linesman's there as well. But one of the players gets sent back on the pitch. So you got two players come on, and I don't know how or why. I don't know if the wrong number went up on the board and it was meant to be someone else, because the guy who did end up going off was on the far side of the pitch. So I don't know who the guy is, a coach or whatever. It might have even been the manager. He's grabbed one of his guys and he's given him some instruction. It's kind of like pushed him back on the pitch. It's just run back on. He's come off. The fourth official's got the board up. He's come off to him by the left side of him and he's gone back on the pitch on the right side of him. He does look really, really sus. Anyway, game continues and legitimately Sittard are there in like a 3-3-4. They've got 12 men on the pitch.
And no one's calling it out. No one's clocked. No.
I don't know, mate. I weren't there, right? Well, you can imagine Van Persie's definitely clocked it, and he's going a bit nuts. But when you see the footage of it, you're like, I don't know. It's not like people are like waving their arms or anything like frantically. I don't suppose if you're on the pitch at that moment, are you scanning to go, hang on, there's 12 of them. You might be thinking, oh, it feels like they've got an extra man here. But that's
Yeah,
probably,
that tactical masterclass
as the
overload.
game's going on, you're probably not looking and going, 1, 2, 3.
Ah, of course
Probably,
not.
you're probably not counting it. So anyway, ball comes to the right hand side, goes out for a throw in, and then obviously there's a bit of screaming at the ref, and he clocks what's gone on, right? And there's 12 players
How long was
on
this
the
period, by
pitch.
the way? Like,
In terms of the actual game going on, I think it was 22 seconds.
okay.
They're 12 men, but they've obviously started attack from deep,
Yeah, yeah.
got it up into the final third. They've won a throw in on the right hand side. Referee realizes what's gone on, and obviously he's like, hell breaks loose. So then this player goes off at the far side of the pitch. Now, this player who goes off didn't touch the ball
Right.
during this period, but he was in quite a high position. He was kind of like on the left wing. So the game stops. They sort it all out. Sittard then take the throw in about 15 yards further up the pitch than where the ball went out. and it gets thrown down the line and it goes out for a corner and they score from the corner.
Fuck. I bet people were raging. I mean, like, what are the rules in that situation?
So the KNVB don't know yet. So that's like the Dutch Football Association. They have openly said we don't know what to do yet. They're seeking advice from IFAB in terms of what to do. So this isn't the first time it's ever happened. There's a couple of incidents I know of. One actually involved Bayern Munich a couple of years ago, when Julian Nagelsmann was their manager, whatever playing. I think it was Nuremberg. They were winning 3-1, and it was a similar thing. Like the wrong number went up on the board, and just momentarily for about 15 seconds, Bayern had 12 players on the pitch. Sort it out. They were winning 3-1. They ended up going on to win 4-1. It obviously didn't impact the result. What was the worst that could happen in those 12 seconds? Nuremberg scored once. So they appealed, but obviously the result stood, right?
Yeah.
There was also an incident here
Oh,
in 2000s. Do you know what this is?
no, I can't tell you the specific incident or game, but as you started talking through this, I was like, I feel like I've heard or seen this in our country before, but I couldn't tell you specifically what it was.
So in 2000, there was an FA Cup tie, fourth round, ironically, between Tranmere and Sunderland. I think at the time, Sunderland would have been Premier League, definitely. And I think Tranmere were probably in the Championship.
Was that the Lee Trundle days?
Lee Trundle, you think the
Was he not?
Swansea?
Yeah, was.
Actually,
Did you
probably
not
did
say
play.
Swansea?
No,
Oh, I thought you said.
thought I said Tranmere. He might
Oh,
have
oh,
played for
sorry, no,
Tranmere
yeah,
for a
you
bit as
did say
well.
Tranmere, and he did play for Tranmere, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But Swansea is who you're associating with. Anyway, so like right in injury time, Tranmere have a player sent off. And at the same time, Tranmere try and make a sub. The fourth official puts the number up on the board for the player that's been sent off.
Right.
So so the sub goes on, and the guy who's been sent off walks off as like the replacement.
No.
Yeah, 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 right. So Sunderland bench are going like nuts. But it's also this one wasn't as easy to spot because Tranmere haven't got 12 players on the pitch. They've still got 11,
Oh,
but it should
damn.
only have 10. So they've had a player
Jesus.
sent off. So the player sent off, but they still carried on with 11 men. And the score at the time was 1-0. And there was literally, it was like literally like the final minute of added time or something. The game finished 1-0. Sunderland, to their credit, took it and didn't appeal.
Wonder
But I
why.
think they could have had real grounds to appeal and maybe get that overturned. In any case, in relation back to this Dutch game, there is nothing here to signify what to do because actually, although it wasn't directly scored, certainly with what happened in the build up in those moments with the additional man on the pitch, you could make a case that it led to Sittard getting an equalising goal and scoring in the game that directly impacted the result of the football match.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be interesting to see what the outcome of that is. Because, yeah, I imagine in the rules and regulations, there isn't a 4.1 ABC section that covers this situation.
I, I I don't know what to suggest. Let me read this quote from the KMVB. This is a very unpleasant and extremely messy situation. We've requested the statements about the exact events from the arbitration and the clubs. Based on those statements, we are going to seek advice from the IFAB. After we receive that advice, the Professional Football League Board will take a decision. And nobody seems to quite know what should happen here.
Yeah, what would your suggestion be?
Well, ultimately, I think you'd need to prove that Sittard had cheated. So in the incidents with the Tranmere and the Bayern Munich games, there's been mistakes from officials. I don't know if you can prove that this is because the coach pushes the player back on the pitch. You'd probably have to prove that he did it with ill intent.
Yeah,
But it also does look like they were trying to substitute a different player. And again, maybe the wrong number went up on the board. So player sees his number and being subbed. And obviously, it's only like a minute to go. So that could be anybody at that stage. Comes off the pitch. And then he gets told, so, no, go back on. Maybe he's gone off on the far side. Like the chances are it probably wasn't an intent to cheat.
no, probably not. And yeah, that's it's quite hard to prove the intent in something, isn't it?
The irony is as well, as I said, they're so close in the league. If Heerenveen won, they'd be above Sittard, and at the moment they're not. And actually, the way that the Dutch league works, it can drop down quite far to potentially end up with like a conference league place because they have like the playoffs and stuff like that. So it can matter. It's not just like a complete dead rubber mid-table league game. It could even impact for the potential for one of those two clubs to qualify for European competition. You
Yeah.
could replay it though. Wait if you replay it and Sittard win. But that's even worse, isn't it?
Yeah, it is difficult because it was a 22-second spell in the game, but like you say, it did possibly influence the outcome.
I think I don't think you can just replay the game because
No.
like if Sittard then have an opportunity to win, and that's even worse.
Yeah,
So
that's a
I
tricky
think
one.
the only thing you can really there's only a couple of things you can do. One, you make them all come back like idiots and play the final minute again, which is a bit of a nonsense, isn't it? Because it's just going to get whacked in the box, try and defend it for a minute. That's all it is. Or you say the result stands, or you award Heerenveen a 2-1 victory.
Yeah, I think they'll probably just have award the victory, to be honest.
I think the result will probably stand.
Yep,
Because I
me too.
think that they'll have an argument to say that it's a refereeing error rather than
Yeah,
deliberate
exactly.
intention to cheat.
Which I think it kind of is, as hard as that is to manage and keep an eye on things. But it fundamentally that should be between the officials, right? To
It
manage
is
that.
also a referee's responsibility to make sure that each team's only have 11 players on the pitch or
Yeah.
less if there's been dismissals, etc. So,
I mean,
yeah,
that's
that result
definitely
might
happened.
stand.
I've seen that happen in my Sunday league games, to be fair. I was
Yeah.
not expecting that in the top tier of the Dutch football leagues.
Euro focus, mate. Off you
Ha!
go.
This was easily my favorite one to research so far. Hala Madrid.
Did you have to research? I mean, it's just like
Well, so
known,
I,
isn't
I
it?
used it as an opportunity to learn about things that I wouldn't have known before. So I think yeah, it's just one of those things. Like you kind of, when you think of Real Madrid, you like everyone can name off the accolades and like the periods where they've dominated in different periods in Europe and stuff. But I tried to look at it from the perspective of what don't I know about them. And so, what I'll say for anyone listening, highly recommend doing this. Go on Real Madrid's website, and they've got an amazing carousel of their history that dates back to 1902, which is when they were formed. And for the sake of this, which is like a 5-10 minute segment, I obviously couldn't get everything in. So from my notes, I've condensed it down. So there's things that are missing. So I highly recommend going and looking at that. And like you will get lost for hours in there.
I would
It
suggest the history of Real Madrid could be 24 hours.
Mate, you could do a whole podcast on it. Like, unbelievable football club. I think it's one of the like, I really can't. I really don't like this word, but I can never think of an alternative to it. But you know when people talk about aura, right? Like Real Madrid just have that about them.
More than anyone, I think.
Yeah, there's just something. Even like, I mean, from the Champions League perspective, like I personally hope they beat Man City. Just from the selfish perspective of, I really, as an Arsenal fan, want to go and watch my team play in the Bernabeu. I know it's not.
Oh, I thought it was you was gonna cause keep people humble, or you
Oh
was gonna go
no.
down that line, no?
No, it's just it's a bucket list thing for me to be able to go watch my team in the Bernabeu. Like, did you go when Tottenham played?
Yeah,
Yeah. What
yeah.
what was that
Not the
like?
set. I went in the quarter final in 2011 when Crash got sent off after 12 minutes. Obviously, gave us no chance. Incredible. It's the loudest place I've ever heard. That was the biggest shock and takeaway. I've never been to a football stadium that's louder. And you think, well, it's
Really?
just Real Madrid against Tottenham, but there was. It's probably the only place I've ever been and be like, there's no point singing here.
Yeah.
It's West Ham.
I've only ever done the stadium tour there when I was on holidays. So I'd love to go and watch a football game, and if it can be my own team,
I did
even
that
better.
as well back in years ago. I had a friend who'd lived out in Madrid for a few years, and I did the tour. So it was about 2006, I think, actually. And I don't know if they still do it, but the first thing they did on the tour that I went on was to put you in a lift outside the stadium,
Yeah,
and it takes you to the back row behind the goal.
I had that
So you
as
come
well.
out of the lift in the back row, and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. And just like when you're walking through the trophy cabinets and stuff, it's just a phenomenal football club. And do you know how many estimated fans they have in the world as of
Oh,
2023? I think this stat was I found.
is this like a social media question or just a legitimate registered members or
Li- I think it was everyone, so social media, all of that good stuff as well.
a billion?
Uh, Close, but not that close. 500 million. So
That's
yeah,
still madness.
it's absolutely bonkers. And yeah, I mean, in terms of their wealth, like we spoke last week, didn't we, around the kind of revenues generated by football clubs and stuff like that. And Real Madrid was way out on top there. In 2024, they were actually valued at 6.6 billion. I think that was euros. yeah, most valuable football club in the world. They became the first football club to actually generate 1 billion in revenue as well. But in terms of their history, so like in terms of the okay, what didn't I know? This is what I wanted to learn. Like, why are they the best football club in the world? Where did it come from? What are their roots? So they were originally founded in 1902, but the roots actually trace back like a few years before that. So apparently, the roots go back to 1897. And there were a group of like academics and football enthusiasts who were encouraged and enthusiastic about this game called football in England that started to take a an interest in it, and they formed a football club called Football Club Sky, supposedly is the story, in 1897. And one of the founding members of that was a Julian Palacios. And in 1900, the club then supposedly split into two. There was New Football de Madrid and Madrid Football Club, and this was the team that then created and became the foundation of what is now Real Madrid. So Madrid Football Club was founded in 1902, officially founded with Juan Padros as the club president, and his brother was quite an influential character in Spain because he was instrumental in organizing the first Copa del Rey in 1903, which we all know as the Spanish Cup, but the Copa del Rey back then was like the only real major competition that they had prior to La Liga, which I think started in 1929. So the Copa del Rey was really the the main the main tournament that people were competing in. So yeah, that's how Madrid were formed. And they kind of dominated for the first few years initially. Anyway, they won four Copa del Rey titles between 1905 and onwards there. And then the term Real, which translates to royal, I didn't actually know this. One of them things I called them Real Madrid my whole life, never really questioned why. It was given to them by King Alfonso the 13th in 1920, and that is when they officially became the name Real Madrid Club de Football.
So technically, it's Royal Madrid
Yeah, and
by
yeah,
translation.
I wonder if that's what Spanish people call them. I wonder if they say Real or Royal.
No, we would say Real, but that's their translation of the
Yeah,
word, isn't it? So that's the meaning is they are Royal Madrid,
yeah,
which kind of goes in line with everything they've achieved.
yeah, exactly. And another few interesting things was prior to the Bernabeu. Again, it's not something I didn't even know the story behind the Bernabeu and the naming and stuff like this. So prior to the Bernabeu, they had two, three different stadiums slash patches of land. So they originally played. It's literally just a plot of land, and it was called Campo de Estrada for a few years. It's literally just a pitch. It's not. It's not a stadium. They played there, I think, between 1900 to like 1912. So in between that transition period from 1897 to the formation in 1902 to 1912, they literally played it. Google it, Campo de Estrada.
Madrid's version of Hackney Marshes, yeah,
Essentially
basically.
that. When you
Okay, yeah.
Google it, you literally just see roads and fields and stuff. It's literally just a plot of land. They then moved to their first like recognized stadium called Campo de O'Donnell, 1912 to 1923. That seated supposedly around 5,000. And then they moved to like a proper stadium, if you can call it that. So Estadio de Chamartin, 1924 to 1946 was their home. And this was around 22,000, 23,000, and that's actually where they won their first La Liga title in 1932. And like by the 1940s, Madrid was growing exponentially. Like that stadium was becoming too small, and the president at the time, Santiago Bernabeu, where I did not know this. I don't know if that's common knowledge that they had a president called Santiago Bernabeu. I genuinely,
Some will know, some won't, Clay.
yeah. I was in the camp of I didn't know this. He was their president at the time and had this ambition for Madrid to become the biggest and best club in the world. I think he's achieved it. Well done, sir.
Well, the only shock on the stadium is it's not been renamed the Florentino Perez Arena or
Yeah, I mean,
something.
is that in the works with him? Probably.
No, I don't think so. In fairness, I think well, in one fairness to him, is he very much understands the tradition of that football club.
Yeah, big time. So yeah, they moved there in 1947, and at the time, I mean, considering it was 1947, it was 75,000 capacity stadium, and obviously over the years and the decades, it's kind of expanded. They've modernized it. It's the iconic venue in world football, I think. They've obviously got the like cool roof and stuff now. Like they've consistently innovated on it. So yeah, they moved there in 1947, and again through their period, like they've had just consistent periods of dominance, but both European success and domestic success, where there's been periods where they haven't necessarily overlapped, and there's been periods where they have. And the 50s and 60s, from my research, look like it was kind of their golden era. And it was under that president, Santiago Bernabeu, that they signed Di Stefano, who I think from the history records looks like was touted as the player that essentially changed Madrid's trajectory. They had people like Puskas in that time. Raymond Copper is a name that I actually did recognize, but can't confess to have ever seen clips of myself. And the Champions League, I mean, they're the record holders, right? They've won it 15 times and they won the first five bloody consecutive.
Not the first five, I don't think. Don't
I
think
read
so.
it was the first five consecutive Euro
No,
Cups they
no,
read.
I don't think so.
Okay.
They did win five in a row, and I think 6 out of 7 maybe as well. I
Okay.
don't think they won the first five.
All right. Well, I thought I read that, but yeah, I may be wrong on that. But
You
the
might be right, mate.
in
Someone will
night.
tell us in the
Well,
comments.
they won the first one anyway, which was in 1956, and one of the most famous ones is when they won it in 1960. They beat Frankfurt 7-3. And yeah, that is. I mean, I've actually seen highlights of that one before. To be fair, for
I
some
think a
reason, it's
lot of
popped.
people will have. Yeah, it was at Hampden
Yeah.
Park as well.
And have you heard what the capacity was for that? Supposedly.
Well, I did a tour of Hampden Park back
Okay.
in December, so you can't be totally accurate, but yeah, it could have been like around about 150,000, I would
Yeah.
say.
Well, so I read it was over 125,000. So if Hampden Park was saying, I couldn't find a specific number, but I saw it was over
The tour guide
125.
I had at Hampden Park said that like comfortably they'd have like 100,000 like officially and stuff, but he reckoned the highest ever attendance they couldn't ever accurately say, but he said it was probably around about 190,000 was probably the record attendance at Hampden Park. But obviously people just used to jump over gates and stuff like that
Yeah.
then. So he recalled one game, I can't remember who it was, but he was saying just people just sitting around the pitch and stuff like that, kind of
Yeah.
similar to the famous White Horse 1923 FA Cup final,
Yeah. And I
which is
mean,
over 100 years ago, and my dad was there.
that's
He
unreal.
wasn't, but it feels like he should have been. The amount
Oh.
he might have talked to me about it.
Yeah, but like the fact that was 100 years ago is absolutely mind blowing. But yeah, in that 7-3, Puskas scored 4 goals, and I think Di Stefano scored a hat trick as well. Can't remember that specifically, but yeah, that is regarded as one of the best and most iconic finals ever. The dominance kind of continued into the 70s, the 80s. Prior to that, they won the Champions League in 1966. But this happened to be their final Champions League win for many years. But yeah, they continued into the 70s, the 80s. They won 5 consecutive La Liga titles between 86 and 90, but they still hadn't won the European Cup. And then it was Jupp Heynckes that came in and ended that drought of 32 years, I'd make that, when he won it in 1998. They then won the Champions League again in the year 2000, 2002. The famous Zidane, that iconic volley against, was that Bayer Leverkusen? Yeah, one of the most famous
Also at
champions.
Hampden Park.
Was that also at Hampden Park? Oh
Yes.
wow, fair play. And then yeah, obviously you kind of get into the 2000s era and the Galacticos policy. So Florentino Perez comes in as the president in 2000, the year 2000, and that's when he introduces the Galacticos policy, which I mean, it is what it says on the tin, right? Like you kind of sign the world's best player every year. And they kind of went through this period where they signed Figo, Zidane, Ronaldo, Beckham, like year after year after year.
I remember being in, I mean, it's much later and more recent, but it would have been, what, 2014. You remember James Rodriguez's goal against Uruguay at the chest and the volley in the World Cup in Brazil. And I remember watching it with a lad who was actually in a bar in Nottingham and saying he's going to Real Madrid as soon as,
100%.
as soon
Yeah.
as he scored that goal.
Yeah. And I think the Galactico approach was interesting because I wouldn't say they became like the most valuable sports brand in that period, but the balance on the pitch wasn't quite there. And then Perez actually resigned in 2006, didn't he? And then he returned in 2009. And I think that transfer window, 2009, probably one of the maddest ever. It was like Ronaldo, Kaká, Benzema, Xabi Alonso. There were other kind of squad players in there. But then the period of dominance started again, didn't it? 5 Champions League titles in 8 years, I think it was, with the three in a row.
I mean, they thought they were cursed for a while because it was a long time till they won the 10th, which I think was
La
when Bale
Decima.
scored,
It was.
2014, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, it'd been a while. It was like this iconic 10th, and then they just kept winning it afterwards anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely bonkers. Yeah, won it 3 times in a row, obviously under Zidane. And yeah, that I looked a little bit into the kind of like again in my head, like I get it, like why. how they're so successful. But I wanted to understand like why and how do you become the wealthiest club in the world? And the obvious is the kind of the brand. We spoke about the amount of fans worldwide, like their shirt and sponsorship deals. I think you and Sudja have touched on before the TV rights in the Liga, how it kind of favors Real Madrid and
Hugely.
yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I think thing that maybe goes under the radar, like they are quite smart in the transfer window. Like they do pick up players on the freeze here and there. Like they do sometimes sell quite high as well. Even players like Vinicius Junior, Rodrigo, like th they did pick them up from Brazil and kind of develop them and stuff. So I think that all combined with obviously their stadium, yeah, they're just unbelievable football club. And yeah, just a football club that just demonstrates that word aura. I think it's probably every young fans or football player's dream to play for them one day, and it's amazing when you research them and you look on their website, you are just in awe. And even like I went through like when I was researching and stuff, just going through the rabbit hole, watching the old Champions League final highlights and stuff where they've done it all, and it's absolutely incredible. But yeah, they've won the Champions League a record 15 times. The La Liga, I think, was 36 from memory. That yeah, unbelievable football club, and I
We've won
hope
over 100 trophies in their history.
yeah, absolutely bonkers.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah,
Particularly when you have such a strong rival there, certainly in terms of modern history of Barcelona. Atletico have done so well, actually, to kind
they
of hold
really
on to
have.
the coattails of those two over the last sort of 2 decades or so, when others who did really well at the start of the turn of the century, like some of your Valencias, they've just not been able to maintain it. Um, Couple of notes. One is a trivia question for you. Who's the only English team to ever win the Champions League in the Bernabeu?
Arsenal, innit?
No, win the.
Oh, win the whole
I'm
competition.
not
Oh no.
big ears, mate. You're not yet,
Oh
pal.
no. Yeah, I've opened myself up there, haven't I? The only team to have won the competition in the Bernabeu.
Only
English
English team.
shirts. Man United or Liverpool?
No, no. Correct answer is Nottingham Forest, who won
Okay.
their 2 European Cup finals in Munich and Madrid. Pretty
Nice.
iconic. The only other 2 teams to win finals actually is the 2 Milan clubs. Milan, I think, late 60s or early 70s. And Inter Milan, people might remember more familiarly with Jose Mourinho's treble winning team in 2010, I think that was. The stadium for me is the best stadium in the world. I think that's the top one. And obviously I went there in 11 and it's obviously been redone with the roof and the kind of layering of netting or whatever they want to call it. They put over the facade of the stadium. So I 100%, if we was to play there again, let's definitely
You
go
go.
back. Brilliant city.
Yeah.
You can have whatever you want in Madrid. You want a party, you want quiet, whatever you want. That is a brilliant major world city, Madrid. I really like it there. I've been a few times. Um, Interesting note on El Clasico and the rivalry, which again they could do a whole podcast on Madrid, Barcelona rivalries and Ronaldo v Messi and the trophies and etc. I think there's a strong chance that the El Clasico yet to be played this season between Barcelona and Madrid won't be in Spain.
Oh, why?
So we had this discussion. We
Because
did a
that's in
pay.
May, right?
It is, yeah. We did a Patreon podcast about Barcelona wanting to, or Madrid wanting to move a La Liga game to America. And it's kind of open water now where if everyone agrees, it can be done. But the resistance is coming from America specifically.
Oh, don't say that. I was looking at going because my 30th birthday's around then.
I wouldn't rule out the prospect of it being somewhere like Wembley.
Okay, I would like that then.
I tell you why. So there's a situation where Barcelona were meant to move back in. They're obviously playing in Espanyol's old Olympic Stadium at the moment. So they're playing Madrid quite late in the season. I think there's like 3, 4 games to go or something. And the agreement was meant to be that Barcelona were only going to have it, I think, for sort of the half the season. They were going to go back into the Camp Nou in January. There is still hopes that as soon as it's ready, they've got a very similar situation to what Tottenham had coming back out of Wembley. Basically, it's
Sure.
like as soon as it's ready and it's signed off and you've had test events, you can get back in there. But it's taken, as these things often do, much longer than anyone had anticipated. So you'd think just naturally we're going to end up staying there for the season. Well, they have a major issue at the moment in basically the weekend after the Champions League semi-final second legs. So they'll be okay to play a Champions League semi-final there, by the way. The weekend after is when they're meant to play Real Madrid, and there isn't any real room in the calendar to do anything else with that fixture with those two teams still in the Champions League. The Rolling Stones have got the arena booked out.
Okay.
So, what are your options? Well, we know that this USA idea has been floated about quite a lot, but there's resistance from the USA. Also, I mean, to move a fixture is one thing, but to move the biggest fixture, the El Clasico, Barcelona are obviously giving up home advantage.
Have they played a domestic game abroad in La
Not
Liga?
yet.
Okay.
It's definitely going to happen with La Liga. It's a certainty. But to take that one Sunday now, because America's obviously kind of putting their resistance up to it affect impacting their MLS, etc. But there's organisers and event promoters in America that do want it. Your MLS and your other groups there are like, no, no, come on, do eyes on what we're trying to grow with our brand here, etc. So it wouldn't surprise me if stadiums that got put forward that were sort of like non-club stadiums around Europe, so Wembley, Stade de France, those sort of things, actually become as solutions here. Because where in the bloody hell can you play that fixture? Like in
Interesting.
terms of near stadiums, you've got obviously Espanyol's own stadium. It's believed that Espanyol will be like, nah, piss off. You're not using our place because they hate Barcelona. So they wouldn't be up for it. And then you start, obviously, Spain's such a vast country. So where you go? Well, I heard the next nearest one in La Liga might be Girona.
Oh,
Now
that's
you played there very
yeah.
recently, and it was restricted to what 15,000.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Can't
say
play El
that's quite
Clasico
small.
in front of that, man.
No way, no.
So do you move the game to Madrid? Like even to like Atletico Stadium. But Barcelona, whatever happens here, Barcelona are going to basically lose their home advantage, right? It's a story really to keep an eye on.
Yeah, interesting. I mean,
It's not impossible that I don't know. Barcelona do have a relationship with the Rolling Stones because they actually had them as a sponsor as part of the deal with Spotify. So it could be that they'd moved their dates, but I don't think so.
that'll be really interesting, especially because yeah, I just checked this the 11th of May, and in La Liga at the minute, there's 4 points separating them. So Madrid are top on 49, Atletico 48 points, Barca 45. So come May, the 11th specifically, yeah, that's definitely one to
Thing is,
keep an eye on.
hypothetically, question to you: if Barcelona played Real Madrid at Wembley, how much would you pay for a ticket?
Ah, yeah, quite a lot. I
Would,
would,
wouldn't you?
yeah, I would love to go and watch that.
They could, I reckon, they could charge sort of tickets, even in just general, in the absolute hundreds,
Yeah,
and there is no danger they wouldn't fill out the stadium.
yeah.
I genuinely think they could price it up like a more than the Champions League final,
I was just
and
going
they
to
would have
ask what.
no problem selling out Wembley
So I remember
whatsoever.
Champions League final at Wembley last year. I remember I was looking with my mates. Was it last year or year before? Either I was looking with my mates, and the different categories of pricing were. I think the cheapest was €200, and then it went in staggered categories of like 400, 800, 1,000, 200, and I think it would be very similar for an El Clasico, to be honest.
Be once in a lifetime chance to watch El Clasico, wouldn't it? Like people would. I'm not saying it's going to happen, by the way. I'm just saying it's very unlikely. I'm sure there
Yeah,
will be some sort of resolution somehow. Might end up maybe in the Olympic Stadium in Seville or something like that. That might be a solution. But I think once it gets moved, I do think the two clubs are going to look at it and go, how much money can we make here?
yeah,
And if
interesting.
America's off the table, Wembley might be the top one, you know.
All right, one to keep an eye on. Yeah, the other thing to keep an eye on is obviously they do play City. That's why we're covering them. So yeah, that is, I mean, yeah, one of Man City, Real Madrid going out at this stage of the tournament, crazy. But yeah, Real Madrid have Atletico Madrid prior to playing Man City. So
When I've watched bits of Madrid this year, you've kind of had the shit and the good. I mean, I watched a breathtaking game when they played Borussia Dortmund, where they were 2-0 down, they won 5-2. And Vinny Jr., he was just
just
unplayable,
yeah,
man. We spoke about it on this podcast actually at the time. He was just
yep,
completely unplayable. But you know, they ended up in a weak and a bad position in the first place. Got a few injuries. I think Rudiger is definitely going to be confirmed out the two games against City. But I don't see if Madrid defend lower and deeper, I cannot see how Man City are going to cope with that pace on the break.
it's that power in attack, right? Is I cannot wait to watch those two legs. I cannot wait.
How
It's,
are City going to live with Vinny Jr., Mbappe, Rodrigo, and Bellingham
yeah, I don't
on the
know.
break?
This is the thing with Madrid, though. Like I've watched games where like you know me, I'm a tactical nerd, right? And like I'm like tactically, they look a little bit
We've said
suspect,
this
and then
so many
and
times. Yeah,
and then it's just boom, boom, bang, got like even the Champions League final against Dortment,
they
like
weren't good in the
they
first
were,
half. They should have been behind. They
but
weren't
then
playing
the
well. And I think, with all due respect, like it was great that Dortmund got to the final. They were probably one of the weakest teams to get to a final since
yeah, but
we
that
put them 2019. Like, yeah, whatever.
yeah, it's definitely a theme with Madrid, isn't it? It's like yeah, they'll go through phases in a game and in a season where they don't look fantastic, and then they just hit clutch mode, don't they? And there's just something about that football club where you just cannot quantify or rationalize things sometimes.
Yeah, they're the ones you want in the group stage.
Yeah.
Because you
Or
might
if
do them
you're
in the group stage. And obviously, I mean, the night we beat Madrid at Wembley, we beat them 3-1. Was one of my favorite. That was the best night we had at Wembley while I was
I
away
remember
from
watching
White
that
Hart
game
Lane.
actually.
Incredible night, man. Yeah, it was Madrid with Ronaldo and everything. They were holders. They went on to still win it that season. Yeah, we wouldn't, if that was like a semi final, we weren't beating them, man. No chance. Yeah, Ala Madrid, what a football club. We've got another huge one from the Euro Focus next week as well. Right, on this day,
What year are we time traveling to
two,
today?
2011, sweetheart.
Okay.
And what I tend to do is I run through years and I go through kind of everything back to as far as I can remember, like the early 90s, look at on this day results. I go through everything. Yeah, this one last night, I hit 2011 and went, oh, I don't need to look at nothing else. There's no way it's not going to be this. Arsenal go to Newcastle tonight, Clates.
Was this the 4-4? Fuck, Tiote, wasn't it?
Yeah, for the benefit of those on the audio, I just give Clayton a very smiley, silent nod. Yes, it is 14 years ago today since the incredible 4-4 draw between Newcastle and Arsenal when Arsenal led 4-0 with 22 minutes to go. I guess the most remarkable comeback in Premier League history. Do you have any memories of it, or is it too early for you?
Yeah, I've got memories of this, all right. So
I was there, I was in your way, and please tell me.
no, no. You know, earlier in this pod, you said about football fans talking about Palmer in the context, and it's like, yeah, football's a game in 90 minutes, mate. I made this mistake. So I was watching this at home actually, and I remember what
What,
you
your
said.
fire stick? It's 3 o'clock kickoff, mate.
It probably was a fire stick, or probably just a dodgy stream. But I remember watching it, and me being the little sado I was, however old I was at the time. I remember in school, I had a good friend who was a Newcastle fan. And I remember like Facebook was quite active at the time. And I remember at 4-0 at half time, like put a little Facebook post out, didn't I? Tagged my mate. His name was Francis at the time. And came back full time, delete, delete, delete. Yeah, I remember Tiote just scoring an absolute worldie. Yeah, R.I.P. Tiote. But yeah, I mean that game was just crazy. Not good memories.
Yeah, it's sat for legend because obviously no team's ever come back from 4 down and got a result. They could have won it as well, ironically. Although I think you could have as well, actually. Arsenal obviously in great form going into the game. Trail Manchester United by I think it was 5 points at the time. He's still got like 14, 15 games to go, so still very much in with a chance. Not too dissimilar to now, and you're closer then than you were now. But you did have, particularly around that era of sort of late noughties, early 2010s under Wenger, you absolutely, as a team, had the ability to wipe the floor with everybody. But it also felt like you could go anywhere away from home and get beat.
Yeah, it was that soft
Fair?
underbelly. Yeah,
Yeah.
bang on.
So anyway, Arsenal come out and we'll have one of these days where they're going to absolutely destroy the opposition. Theo Walcott goes through 1-on-1, 45 seconds into the game, bang, 1-0. 2 minutes later, free kick from the far left-hand side. Johan Giroud heads it in 2-0. That's not Olivier Giroud, that is Johan Giroud. They're two different players. 10 minutes gone, Walcott bursts down the right again, pull back for Robin Van Persie, told you he wouldn't get mentioned again. 3-0 to Arsenal after 10 minutes. Newcastle fans looking at exits. 26 minutes gone, Van Persie rises from a Bakary Sagna cross to make it 4-0, 4-0 up at Newcastle in 26 minutes. And it brought me back some horrible flashbacks of my own beating at St James's Park when we were, what, 5-0 down in 17 minutes?
Yeah.
That must actually be, and it doesn't get mentioned, that must be one of the quickest any team's got to 4-0 up in the Premier League game, especially away from home. Must be probably the quickest. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't really get but I think it doesn't get a mention because we
Because of
fucked it.
whammed.
Yeah.
You very nearly went 5-0 up before half time. You go in 4-0. up, boos ringing from the home crowd, etc. Yes, it's in the bag, and it. Minutes into the second half, Abu Dhabi ends up in a crunching tackle with well-known gentleman Joey Barton. And Barton goes in, let's say, somewhat aggressively, which was in his nature. And Diaby kind of grabs him. I'm going to say like a choke. That would be well over the top, but in like the back of the neck, kind of hands on quite firmly and kind of shoves him away. I don't know. I'm not sure it's a red card, personally.
I
I
can't
don't know.
remember that to be
I've
fair.
seen worse. I've definitely seen. If he'd done it to the front of him, yeah, but he kind of grabbed him on the back of the neck. You can't. Can you strangle someone on the back of the neck? I don't think you can,
I
really.
don't
You
think
can't
so.
do.
No.
No, you can't do. So it was just like a firm grip. I don't know. Was it a red card? I don't know. Anyway, referee Phil Dowd sent him off. Okay, 10 men. All right, you're not going for Premier League records now, but you're 4-0 up. And you coast through. Next 20 odd minutes, kind of untroubled, no problem, seeing it out, un-Wenger like professionally. Until Koscielny concedes a penalty with 22 minutes to go, and well-known gentleman Joey Barton steps up and scores bottom left-hand corner.
What minute was that?
68th to make it
Fuck it now.
4-1. Yeah, I know. He's so bad, mate. Sorry. Leon Beston has a goal disallowed. But then he does score again. This is with 15 minutes to go. A goal that would maybe get ruled out now because I think he kind of half controls it with his arm. Definitely accidental, but it would be under the scorer. It's
Yeah.
hit his arm. He rolls it 4-2. And obviously, you scored twice in 7 minutes, and it was 15 to go. It's on, isn't it? 7 minutes to go to get another penalty. It's proper dodge. I know Arsenal have never had decisions go against them. This one is one, yeah, it's a proper dodge. It's a free kick, goes over the top. It's going out for a goal kick, and there's kind of a bit of a bundle of bodies. I think it was Williamson went down, and penalties given. Barton takes it again and scores. Chesney's about 4 yards off his line, nearly saves it, but fine. The rules were a bit different then. So it's 4-3, 7 minutes to go. And at Newcastle, if you're on your way and you're obviously up in the gods, some serious brown trousers at a high height, not just because of people having vertigo. 3 minutes to go, another free kick from the right gets headed out, and Coote, bless his soul, has obviously left us now. Comes up with this most ridiculous strike that he never did before or after ever again in his career on his left foot. Just smashes this volley and absolutely just flies in the bottom corner. It's one
What
of
the
the
strike.
most iconic goals. Also includes a very iconic celebration where he's kind of very arms out, almost a little bit like not with the intensity of Marco Tardelli from 1982, but very much arms out, and everyone's obviously just chasing after. It ends with a bundle. If you ever see it back, it ends with Steve Harper, the Newcastle goalkeeper, giving Tiote a people's elbow, which is the Rock's move,
Yeah.
obviously. And at that point, you must have. I don't know if you could recall it. You must have thought you were going to lose.
You're right. I can't recall, but probably the only thing like my crystal clear memory of that day was the kind of shithousing my mate and then eating humble pie.
There's 3 minutes to go. Kevin Nolan did have a chance to win it. It wasn't particularly close, but my goodness, yeah. And the thing that really kind of hurt Arsenal that day, I mean, it's obviously that. But if you'd have won, you'd have gone 2 points behind Manchester United because they lost that day at Wolves. So you stayed 4 points and ironically, 4 goals in the goal difference behind Manchester United. So, I mean, if you'd have won that game, you'd have arguably equaled the goal difference, then been only 2 points behind.
Damn.
United obviously would go on and win the title. Team lineups for the record for you, Clates. Newcastle lineup: Harper, Colaccini, Williamson, Enrique left back, Simpson right back, Barton, Tiote, Nolan, Gutierrez, Peter Lovenkrantz. I had a Newcastle mate. We used to always sing his name, Peter Lovenkrantz, Lovenkrantz. It was like a symbol of how ordinary they were at that time. And Leon Best played up front because Andy Carroll had been sold to Liverpool only days earlier. I mean, Carroll obviously went to Liverpool. Fernando Torres went to Chelsea. Obviously, Luis Suarez also went to Liverpool. I bet you don't remember one of Newcastle's substitutes who wasn't used.
I mean, any context, any
He shall not be
clue?
named.
Is
He
it?
was an unused substitute for Newcastle, yeah.
Oh wow. Fair play. Yeah, I remembered he played for them. But I didn't remember he would have been in the squad against us.
Can you say his name before someone puts in the
Yeah.
comments?
With pleasure. Sol Campbell.
Terrific. The Arsenal lineup was Chesney, Sanya, Koscielny, Giroud, Clichy. Probably didn't help you that around the time that Diaby went off, got sent off, Giroud also went off, I presume injured, replaced by the world-class Sebastian Scalacci.
Dear God.
Midfield was Diaby, Fabregas, and obviously very young Jack Wilshere at this time. Walcott was replaced late on by Emmanuel Eboué, who became obviously very much a cult hero in the end for Arsenal fans. Andreas Sharvin was replaced by Thomas Rosicky with 20 to go, and Robin van Persie
Decent team.
up front. Yeah, I suppose that would have been close to your first. Who would have been Koscielny's best partner then? Was it Giroud or someone else would have been injured?
I don't think it would have been. I was like, would Vermaelen have been there in that
Oh,
period?
maybe.
I
Or was he
can't remember.
later? This is
The
2011.
the names that before you read out the lineup, I was trying to predict the lineup, and I was thinking, would it have been Gallas? Would it have been Vermaelen? Would it have been? Yeah, I don't. It was before Mertesacker. I feel like we got him. Oh, was it? Mertesacker came in 2011.
No, yeah, so that's definitely the summer after.
All right,
Yeah. You kind of panicked at the end of the window, didn't you?
that was
Lost
after the
8-2
8-2.
at Man United.
You cover
And
that, mate. You don't need to put me through it
I
already.
know. You bought like five players, didn't you? Like on
Yeah,
deadline day, there was quite a bit of panic going on.
yeah, that's
I
bothering me. I don't know who would have been the first choice centre back next to Koscielny. It wouldn't have been Giroud. I just can't work out if
Vermaelen
it's for
sounds
my.
right.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
was him.
I tell you what, you check while I tell you my when you signed Vermaelen. I'll tell you my experience of that day because we were playing Bolton at home. And we played really well first half, but ended up like we were 1-1 for a really long period. And what Tottenham used to do on the big screens was about every 15 minutes they'd put along a bottom ticker of what the scores were of the other games. And obviously, if Arsenal were having a bad result, I used to be a little bit more cheeky about it. So obviously, they did it four times in the final. So they probably would have put an update at like 75 minutes and that would have been it. And then at full time, you're like, oh, what's the scores? Okay. That would have been like a lot. So it come up like 4-1 and then it was like 4-2 quite quickly afterwards. And then it come up 4-3. So they're obviously putting all the scores up, but you know why they're doing it, right? And obviously we're trying to get a winning goal. So they're trying to hype the crowd a little bit with silence, which is quite an interesting tactic. And then obviously it came up. We had a goal kick and it came up again, and you could see the scores. And obviously, Newcastle Arsenal wasn't at the front. There's like the whole crowd's going, oh, and you just knew that it was going to be 4-4.
Yeah,
And we didn't have the context of you'd had a player sent off or
yeah,
anything
yeah.
like
Of
that.
course.
We just knew. And obviously, you're in staggering disbelief. It's like, what have they
Yeah, that is
done?
a way to galvanize a club when your rivals are bottling it
Well,
up the
goal kick
road.
goes long, it gets flicked on. Nico Cranchaw from the edge of the box smashed in the winner.
No way.
True story.
Momentum in
One
football.
two one two one. Yeah.
We
I don't know if Tottenham got pinched for that afterwards because I don't remember it happening much after that. He was definitely something they did for a little while, and it didn't like last that long that they showed scores from other games. Vermaelen, when did he sign for you?
yeah, we signed him in 2009. So
There you go. It
yeah, I
must have
think
been
it probably
Vermaelen.
would have
Yeah,
been. Yeah,
yeah,
but
that
he was
makes sense.
probably injured. Good stuff.
Yeah, that's on this
I
day
hope it's not a repeat tonight.
from 2011. Should also shout out it wasn't the only mad score that day, by the way. Everton beat Blackpool. Ian Holloway's Blackpool 5-3 that day.
Lovely
And
stuff.
Wigan beat Blackburn 4-3.
All the goals. Fantasy would have been popping that weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, all them lot would have walked out the ground and went, I think we're first on match of the day tonight. You're not. That's on this day from 2011. Thank you very much, Clayton. Clayton's be back with me tomorrow for the transfer window show, kind of a roundup of the January transfer business, specifically talking quite a bit about the most recent additions into the Premier League over sort of the weekend and on Monday. Just seems to say thanks very much, everyone. Smash a like, hit the sub button. If you listen to the audio, 5-star review goes a really long way. Cue music, please, man child.